Welcome to For the Record. I'm Will Keneally. We start this week with a landmark case heard in the Wisconsin Supreme Court. It's one of the first major cases that we've seen the High Court debate since it flipped to a liberal majority this August. The case is a challenge to the state's legislative districts. Democrats are alleging an unlawful gerrymander. And if the current maps are overturned, Republicans could see less power in the state capitol. And that appears an all but certain conclusion, as some of the conservative justices on the court appeared frustrated.
Everybody knows that the reason we're here is because there was a change in the membership of the court.
This is not the first time the court has heard challenges to the state's legislative districts. Wisconsin redrew its maps after the 2020 census, and that process was the subject of lengthy lawsuits. Now, the Wisconsin Supreme Court actually sided with the state's Democratic governor to use his maps. But after another challenge to the U.S. Supreme Court, the swing justice on the Wisconsin bench changed his mind and cast the deciding vote to put in place maps drawn by the Republican legislature.
Respect for prior decisions is fundamental to the rule of law. Stare decisis is the preferred course of judicial action because it promotes even-handed, predictable, and consistent development of legal principles and contributes to the actual and perceived integrity of the judicial process.
The court could issue a decision within a matter of weeks or months here. They'll need to work relatively quickly if they want new maps put in place before next fall's election. Candidates in those races will actually start circulating their nomination papers next spring. Now, getting to this court case has been a long time coming for many advocates, including former state senator Dale Schultz. He's a longtime figure in the state capitol representing the Richland Center area for decades. He's been pushing for a process to draw fair maps. And we caught up with him earlier in the week during a break in the Supreme Court arguments.
So obviously redistricting has been kind of on the docket for a while now. You've been working on it for a while. So
10 years.
Yeah. If you could just kind of briefly describe what led to this point today that we're seeing this morning.
Well, initially we went around the state and drummed up support, Senator Tim Cullen and I, and we were joined by a very able group of legislators over the years who continued to advance the effort, and a number of other people around the state. Eventually we went to the United States Supreme Court, where the court basically said, you're in the wrong place. This is a state matter. You have to take it to the state court in Wisconsin. And here we are, a number of years later, having the arguments in front of the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and I've been downstairs in the overflow room, listening intently and thinking about the past 10 years as well as the arguments as they're being presented.
And it's rare to see, obviously, you're a Republican, Senator Cullen's a Democrat. It's weird to see both sides of the aisle, this day and age, work together on it. Is that emblematic of just the issue that we're seeing?
Well, I think it's, first of all, too bad, because democracy is something that both sides should embrace. And I think that's the spirit that, we decided to get involved in this issue. Redistricting has been going on since Elbridge Gerry began the process back in Massachusetts many, many years ago, but never until the most recent redistricting was the employment of analytics and computers used, which dramatically skewed the impact of the redistricting process. And I think, frankly, made the entire process undemocratic, and that's what led both of us to be involved. We had both been around in the majority and the minority multiple times, and we recognized that democracy was the most important thing if we were going to maintain faith in our system of government. And we know, or knew I should say, that both political parties had been guilty of gerrymandering in the past, and it was time for it to stop. I still believe that. I think the people believe that, and we'll see what happens, what the court does.
I'm curious, too, we're kind of in an intermission with the arguments behind us right now. What are you making of the argument so far?
Well, I've probably a little bit unique among Wisconsin legislators. I'm not an attorney, but on occasion I would go down and listen to the arguments before the court. So I'm used to the fact that the justices have the authority and the ability to interrupt the speakers who are making their arguments to ask questions. And you really get to see some intellectual heavyweights at work. The people who come here are smart people, And I have to say, I couldn't be prouder of the court that we have right now. They have a strong difference of opinion on many issues, but all of them, I think, are acquitting themselves very well and are asking very pointed questions, attempting to tease the best out of those folks that are making oral arguments to them.
It's fascinating because we hear such contention around the current makeup of the court right now. And you say you're proud of the justices.
Well, I was of the Supreme Court, I think, virtually the entire time I was in the legislature. I am aware of the partisanship that has entered in to the process, and that's a shame. I'd like to believe that people who run for the courts can represent and fairly judge for everyone. In fact, one of the things I'm most proud of is when Democrats and Republicans in Richland County got together and supported our district attorney for a court seat on the Court of Appeals. I bring that up because it's the way I think the system should work. We shouldn't have Republican judges and Democrat judges, and I think most judges feel that way, even though the pressure is there. And I don't see any real partisanship on display today. What I see is hard questions by judges who are trying to get at the truth and who, yes, have experience and opinions, but I think their questions are on point. And it's fun and interesting. It might be a little nerdy, I'll admit that, but I think more people should take the time to come in and listen to their court. And they can certainly get a flavor of it when they listen to your broadcast. And if they really want an in-depth view, they can always go to Wisconsin Eye, which does a terrific job as well.
If you had to stare into your crystal ball at all after this morning, do you have a sense of what a ruling might look like on this case?
Well, I think that you're going to see on the first issue about contiguity that's going to get the ball rolling on behalf of the plaintiffs. And then I think the real question is going to be whether or not the court is going to want to draw their own map, or whether they're going to ask both parties to come up with a new map on each side that they can pick from. And their rationale for doing that is to sort of force the parties to be real about being fair. And that puts them at risk. Frankly, I think there's a point to be made for that approach, but actually I think it would be better to, at least from my point, to see somebody from the outside come in and redraw all the maps. I think that will create a sort of a shock to the system that will be therapeutic in the long run. Maybe people will be fair with one another if they have to worry about a court coming in disregarding where they live and suggesting that they have no claim to their seat whatsoever.